back to Serendipity Intended. My name is Tracy Ann. I am so glad that you are here. It is time for another day in the Junk Journal July 2026 challenge, and it is day 2. So let's go ahead and open up this journal and get the prompt list and see what our prompt is for day 2, and it is nature. Now, I have to admit before we go any further that I did add 2 items after the video from day 1, those button and the flower. And now here we are at day 2. Now the prompt is nature, and I love this fish, and I love the look of this fish vertically. So I decided that that was going to be the focal point for this page. And I had the idea to use these strips of tissue paper and sewing patterns to create like seaweed. And then I have a circle stamp and these 3 distress oxide stamps. I was originally thinking about spraying them, which is what I did on my sample, and then ended up not doing that. So I just decided to stamp. And what I wanted to do was stamp a little bit on the background and then also over top of the fish to try and give some depth. And I'm also purposely letting the ink sort of dissipate so that the depth of the bubbles, it varies from stamp to stamp. I did decide that stamping without something underneath of the paper was a little problematic, so that's what I was doing there. And so with that color done, I switched over to peeled paint and kind of did the same thing, just moved some circles around, knowing that my fish was going to kind of be in the center and that I didn't really need to do a whole lot of stamping where that was. And then my last color here, a darker blue. I thought the 3 of these colors together sort of felt very underwater-ish, and also coordinated really nicely with the fish. I'm sorry, you can hear my phone chiming in the background. My family is texting me. So you notice I ended up with fewer of those bubbles being visible than I thought. Now I moved the fish over to the side approximately where I planned to hold on to or put him, just so I could use him as a reference. And then I'm going to take this napkin decoupage medium and use it to adhere the strips of patterned or sewing pattern paper and also the tissue paper. And as I was starting to glue this down, I realized that I used water activated inks, and this medium is a little bit wet. So I was a little panicked as I was doing this that it would blend or blur. Fortunately, it didn't too much. I also realized after I put this piece down that what I really should do was twist it a little bit, and that would give it much more of the look of seaweed moving in the water, because seaweed doesn't just stay flat, it moves and twists. So I did that with the rest of the pieces. And I wanted them to come from a similar area at the bottom of the page, but then just sort of move around as though they were, in water. And so I was not super precious about this on purpose. I sort of decided the direction and then let what was happening kind of dictate where I was going with it. And I didn't want it to be too cluttery, but at the same time I did want to give sort of the feeling of, again, that seaweed behind my fish. So again, put a little bit down to sort of anchor it, and then let it kind of twist and land wherever it ended up twisting and landing. One of the things I really like about using this technique is that the tissue paper really becomes part of the background, and I love the translucent look of it, but I also like the way with this medium that it really does kind of flatten into the page and You don't really get so much the sense of depth as you do just the texture. And then I realized that I pretty much was going to cover up every single one of the papers that I just put down with my fish, which was not forward thinking on my part. In retrospect, I probably should have maybe traced a little bit of the outline of the fish just inside so I would sort of know where that was going to be. So I had to go back and add a few more bits where I knew that they would stand out. So that one definitely will. And a few of the ones that I originally put down did. And then I decided I needed one more so that I would be able to see it. And I kind of pop that one in. I have a fan going in my room, which was not helping me with this process because the fan really wanted to blow that very lightweight paper all over the place. So that was a little bit better. So then I initially thought, oh, okay, I've already got this medium out here, so I will just use that medium to decoupage the fish on. And once I put it down, I realized that the combination of the fan drying that liquid and also the fact that the liquid is very thin, that it wasn't substantial enough to glue down the paper. It wasn't really adhering. And so I ended up having to grab a different medium to use for the paper. What I didn't do, and I really should have done, a tip for everybody else, is I should have pulled the fish completely back up. As soon as I realized what I wanted to do, I started to here, and I wish I had done the same thing with the rest of the fish. I thought it was better adhered, and then as I was going over the top, I realized that it really wasn't, and I had some bubbling underneath, and you can see me trying to get to some of that, and that area that I'm really worrying is the spot that just right in the center, of course, of the fish. It did not want to stay flat. In the end, I decided if I worked it too much, I would end up tearing the paper, and that would be worse than a little bit of bubbles. So I just there I am trying to deal with it again, get it nice and flat, and pretty much then just decided to let it go. Then I went back over, while it was still sort of wet, I went back over with some more of the sewing pattern paper and the tissue paper so that there could also be some seaweed on the top. And it was definitely less apparent than I thought it would be. It pushed it almost a little too much into the background. I think particularly the brown paper, just because of the color, it sort of blended in. But I did like the way that it felt. It did sort of give that sort of flowy quality to it that seaweed has when the water is moving. So while my fish dried, I decided that I would work on my title. So I had this fun ransom note letter sticker book. And what I did was I got a piece of plastic and I set my stickers on the plastic so that I could figure out the alignment and make sure that it fit, because I wanted to use Just Keep Swimming as my title, but I knew that it would be super tight to fit the word swimming. So I used the transparent paper to kind of attach it. Now, what I did discover, as you can see as I'm fighting it here, I put too much of the sticker on the plastic. I put about half to 2/3 of the sticker on the plastic. I would definitely do this idea again, but maybe only put a quarter of the sticker onto the plastic, because I would have had to fight with it a little less rigorously had I done that, I think. And then I ended up deciding for the other two words because I knew that I had plenty of space, that rather than try and fight with it and pull it off, that I would just adhere the letters on one at a time. You can see me deciding just to do it there. And for those words, because I knew I had the space, I was comfortable just adhering them down. I was pleasantly surprised by how well these stickers worked with the fish. I did pick ones that had similar colors, but when they all were together on the page, it really just popped. It was one of those things that I figured would turn out well, and it exceeded my expectations. So I was pretty happy about that. I did decide that it wasn't quite popping enough, so I grabbed my Micron, the 005 in black, and I outlined the letters just to make them pop a little bit. Now, you can't really see this on the video, I don't think, but I was purposely going fast and letting my lines be a little bit squiggly. Again, keeping with the idea of waving in the ocean, and also because I just felt like being fussy and super precise was not what I wanted to do. I didn't really want to emphasize the edges of the stickers, and so I was very happy with that choice. Then I grabbed the same pen, but in an 05 thickness, so a little bit thicker, to do the word swimming, just to make that word stand out a little bit more than the other two words. And again, it probably doesn't translate very well on the page, but it definitely did make the word swimming stand out just a little bit more than it had previously. So just checking here to make sure the page is dry, and it is. So I'm going to go back over with my stamps again and add a few more bubbles to create, the sense that he's swimming through bubbles, and one off the page, little inspiration there. And then I'm blotting the rest of it onto that paper. I think that paper will end up being a super fun piece of collage paper that I can use later in the journal. That'll give a sort of a sense of cohesion between the pages in the journal. I like to try and reuse papers and or colors in a journal just to kind of tie things together, particularly when I'm doing a challenge like this one. And again, I'm really not concerned with the fact that some of these circles are darker and some of them are lighter. Again, because I feel like that gives it more of a sense of kind of being in water, because water is not perfect. And there's my made collage paper. And then lastly, I decided to go ahead and grab that Micron pen again and just follow along the leaves to create just a little bit more emphasis on them and some movement. But before I did that, I went ahead and used my label maker, as I've decided to do for each of the prompts, and put the day to and the prompt nature on my label, and then adhere it onto the page so that I know kind of what the inspiration was. And you can't really see it on the frame. I'm trying to get it here so that you can see it. Apologies that that is, whoa, so close to the camera. And the one bad thing about this super tall book is that I can't quite fit the whole thing on frame. If I make my camera zoom out further, then you can see the edges of my little mat that I'm using for my crafting. Go ahead and put this back in place. And there is my page. A little bit of space to do some writing there for journaling. And you can see I'm adding those lines just to create a little bit more emphasis. It kind of feels a little bit like an Eric Carle illustration, which was not my intention, but I really do sort of love it. get a little bit of a closer look at some of the details. And that is my page. I had a great time with this one. I hope you did too. Thank you so much for joining me, and make a great day.